Good evening, all of you, and welcome in Siracusa, in the Cathedral Siracusa, and let's begin with our opening session. Please.
Dear colleagues and friends, welcome to Siracusa. It is my pleasure to extend to all of you a very warm welcome on behalf of the European Association of Biblical Studies. It is such a delight that for the very first time in the history of our association, we are able to gather here in Siracusa, Sicily, on the island of Ortigia. I would like to express a special welcome to the Archbishop of Siracusa, Francesco Lomanto, who is graciously hosting us today in the Cathedral of Siracusa. We appreciate your hospitality, Your Excellency. Thanks a lot. Without doubt, there is no better place for the opening ceremony of a biblical conference than this cathedral, whose architectural history was most recently used as an analogy for the composition of the Pentateuch. Thus, as a Pentateuchal scholar, I am particularly excited to kick off our EABS Annual Conference at this historic place. But to be perfectly honest with you, I am even more thrilled about this happening as Executive Officer of EABS, since the cathedral is an architectural complex where almost each and every stone describes a different historical period and which represents a crossroad of cultural contact and exchange. And this building can also be understood as a symbol for our association, which is dedicated to bringing together a diversity of scholars, research areas, approaches, methods, contexts, etc., to engage in scholarly discourse. Especially in light of the many challenges the humanities as a whole, but theology and religious studies in particular, have to face in European academia at the moment, I am ecstatic to see that our association is growing continuously. This year's annual conference gives testimony to this growth. With a total of 650 participants, around 500 on site and 150 virtual ones, this is the biggest conference in the history of our association yet. And I can assure you that EABS is dedicated to continue this uptrend. Moreover, I was delighted to realize that already one of the most famous inhabitants of Siracusa, the ancient Greek mathematician, physicist, engineer, astronomer, and inventor Archimedes, seemed to be well aware of the relevance of history. Quote, "Man has always learned from the past. After all, you cannot learn history in reverse." End of quote. While this quote obviously does not refer to biblical studies in particular, it does reflect the importance and relevance of historical approaches, which are also represented in many different ways in the research of EABS. The history of this annual conference itself is very remarkable and unique. The initial idea to hold an annual conference in Sicily goes back to a dinner during the joint meeting of EABS and ISBL 2018 in Helsinki. when our former President Uti and other representatives of the committee met with Danilo Verde. We were immediately captured by Danilo's love, enthusiasm, and commitment for his home Catania and Siracusa in particular, where he made his first academic teaching experience at our hosting institution, the San Metodio. Our former president had just one very hard criterion, and I'm quoting Uti here: EABS can only hold the annual conference in Sicily when there is enough ice cream. End of quote. And the rest is history. 2 site visits, a pandemic, and a lot of work later, we are finally gathering here in Ortigia and looking at this beautiful venue as well as the program of the conference. I have to admit, it was more than worth the wait. Yet it is not only the venue that makes this annual conference special, but all those who contributed to it and who worked tirelessly to make it such an excellent event. First of all, a magnitude of thanks is due to the local organizing team. While holding a position at the University of Salzburg, Nisi Candido graciously invited EABS to the San Metodio and engaged in liaising with multiple institutions, sponsors, and individuals to ensure the smooth preparation and running of the conference. Nisi is not only an expert on the textual history of the Bible, but with regards to organizing a conference, he can basically make everything work in Ortigia. And I witnessed this, it's really incredible. Not only an excellent event for EABS, but also got the people of Siracusa involved, encouraging them to talk about the Bible. Danilo Verde took on the role as co-chair of the local organizing team easily and put an immense work into planning this conference, while being a postdoctoral researcher in Hebrew Bible at KU Leuven. With outstanding commitment, stamina, creativity, and just the right dose of humor, he took on the great challenge of organizing a hybrid meeting of such scale. Express my deepest gratitude to Mariangela Maresca, who is not only a professor at San Metodio, but in a way the angel of our conference. In a Wonder Woman fashion, she manages to keep everything together and working perfectly. Finally, we have to thank Fausto Minieco, who prepared all the wonderful guided tours and trips of this conference. And I hope that you really take the opportunity to visit 1 or 2 or even 3 of these tours and trips. Last but not least, I would like to thank the 16 local and 6 international student volunteers who work intensively to make this meeting a joyful and unforgettable experience. And I have been here since Thursday, and I have seen how hard they worked every day over the weekend, all the time, from morning until late evening. So thank you very much, especially to the local volunteers. And as you have seen, you will recognize all volunteers by the beautiful orange conference shirts they are wearing And please do not hesitate to approach them with questions, problems, but of course also compliments. Thus, long story short, thanks to all of you and your institutions for making us feel so welcome in Siracusa, and for the enormous work that you have done in preparation for this conference. There are no words to express our deep gratitude. As a constantly growing association with around 1,200 members at the moment, EABS is committed to promoting knowledge, research, and education in academic biblical studies and its related disciplines, not only in Europe, but worldwide. Our 63 research units, covering a wide and diverse range of methods, topics, and perspectives, are the heart of our association. Thus, I would like to express my gratitude also to all chairs and speakers whose research and commitment to EABS represents the foundation of this conference. By providing senior and junior scholars an international platform for their research, EABS seeks to foster an intra- and interdisciplinary exchange of high quality with special emphasis on innovative research and new formats of discourse. In addition, the association is deeply committed to supporting junior scholars in particular in their early career development. With the Student Prize, the Graduate Symposium, the relaunched Research Grant, and the new Student Network, EABS intends to promote scholarship and professional development. This year's Graduate Symposium in Jerusalem, with a total of 60 participants, gave testimony to the impact of our student initiatives, and we can look forward to the next year's Graduate Symposium, which will be held at the University of Graz in Austria. I would like to take this opportunity to express my thanks to our student representative Mariola Trojanowska and her team of students for their outstanding work in the student network. Thanks a lot. As many of you know, as executive officer, I am only one of many committee and subcommittee members who serve our association in various ways. And I brought a picture of the current committee so that you see the faces, and also here please feel free to approach the members of the committee at your convenience. While EABS does not have full-time staff, we are immeasurably grateful to have Bruno Biermann as a technical assistant. And since EABS intends to continue the hybrid conference format due to issues of equality and accessibility, the association decided to enforce the technical support, and we are very happy to welcome Daniel Schmitz as our new and second technical assistant. A growing association as ours is also in need of more administrative support, and we are delighted to welcome Ildiko Kovac and Jona Dwyer-Shalem as new administrative assistants. We look forward to working together with you and are grateful for everything you have already done in the context of this conference. When it comes to administrative support, EABS could not function without Sarah Whittier, who will continue her work for our association. Sarah has been such a gift for EABS, going well beyond what we could ever expect in terms of dedication, flexibility, and personal initiative. And basically, I think Sarah Whittier is the most important person in our association. Besides George, our president. I am speaking not only for myself, but for the entire committee, all research units, chairs, and the whole membership when I express our gratitude to Sarah for all her work and efforts which make the procedures within our association smoother and far more enjoyable. And we are looking forward to welcome Sarah's son in November and to make him the youngest honorary member of EABS. Welcome address and these words of thanks while the Russian aggression against Ukraine continues and threatens those values that provide the basis for academic freedom and collaboration. In these critical times, EABS seeks to continue its support for all scholars with an interest in biblical studies and related areas who find themselves in conflict zones to enable all in Europe and beyond to participate in vibrant disciplinary and interdisciplinary range of academic discourses. Thus, we are happy that this year's program includes a workshop on the Bible in Ukraine, history, language, and topicality. And please join its sessions on Thursday to honor our Ukrainian colleagues and to show our solidarity with Ukraine. On this note, I wish all of us a wonderful conference, interesting conversations, networking, meeting old friends and making new ones, fruitful exchange, and discussing high-quality research and arguments in the spirit of joy, collegiality, and collaboration. And please enjoy all the beautiful and delicious things Siracusa has to offer. In particular, the ice cream and the granita. Thank you very much.
Your Excellency, and dear friends and colleagues, all members of this grand association, can I express my thanks to Katharina for all her warm words and endorse everything she says about the warm welcome in Siracusa here in Ortigia. It's my first time in this place, and what a wonderful place to be. I have one major responsibility in this session, which is to award prizes. So without further ado, let us move to talk about the award of the research grant for 2023. I'm pleased to announce that we had a nice field of contestants this year, and I am grateful to Marie-Lou Ibita for managing the process of assessing the applications for the EABS research grant. Our runner-up in second place was Olabisi Obermakin for a project on constructing a feminist Afropean, that is Nigerian and British, hermeneutical lens for reconfiguring New Testament female characters. So, congratulations to Olabisi. it's nice to mention the runner-up because that's all they get. But this year's award, I'm very pleased to announce, goes to Cristina Exposito di Vicente from Madrid for her project, A History of Ancient Israel and Transjordanian Lands Through Colors, a study from the physical-chemical perspective. So Cristina, if you are here, please can you come up? It seems to me a suitable idea to give a small piece of papyrus with a Duomo on it from Siracusa. So whenever you have a book that you're working on, put it in there to remember the success you've had with EABS. Congratulations. And so we turn to the student essay prizes. We'll see what comes up on the screen. But here we have two categories, Old Testament broadly conceived and New Testament broadly conceived. Our runner-up in Old Testament is Megan Alsane Parker on Unity in Diversity, Lamentations as Cultural Trauma. Congratulations to you, Megan. The essay prize itself for Old Testament, Hebrew Bible and related disciplines goes to Kishia Hidaka for the anti-diaspora scribal group and the formation of the wilderness narrative. If you are here, so is Kishia present amongst us? So Kishia will receive a piece of papyrus with the Duomo on in due course. And then for the New Testament, our runner-up is Maria Chen on voluntary childlessness as resistance, an interpretation of Thlipsis te Sarki in 1 Corinthians 7:28 from the Global South. Congratulations, Maria. But the prize itself for New Testament and related areas goes to Afetami Alabi. Can a slave serve two masters? Jointly owned slaves in documentary papyri and the Gospels. Afetami, are you here? Much, everybody, and a special thanks to all those members who have spent time judging, reading essays, judging them. Uti had a large panel of helpers, and we were able eventually to come to this happy outcome. So thank you very much to everybody who's supported the work of EABS through this extra little bit of work that you've done for us.
you know how much Sicilians are lazy. So we are a bit lazy and we go slowly. So you have to enter our rhythm. In the meanwhile, I can take advantage of this time just to give you some good and tasty informations. How to reach the reception, the opening reception at the end of this presentation. We hope that we do this presentation in a while. So we will move with the help of our volunteers. We will go through this way, this street that is Via Minerva. So some volunteers will lead you this way through Via Minerva. Then we go to Piazza Diana, Piazza Minerva, and we will arrive together through Corso Matteotti to the street, to our goal. So it takes 10 minutes and we have to move together. So at the very end of the presentation, we will exit the cathedral, we will go to the right, to Via Minerva, and we will go through Piazza Minerva to our goal, that is Via de Benedictis. If someone of you wants to Google or will get lost during the path, you know what is our goal. In case we will meet there in a few minutes. Dear members of EABS, it is our great pleasure to welcome you to Siracusa and to the Istituto Superiore di Scienze Religiose e Metodio for the 2023 EABS Annual Conference.
We have been preparing for this important academic event for a long time, and it's so wonderful finally to see you here.
We would like to extend our greetings to those who are joining us online. We hope that although you are not physically present with us, you can still make the best of the coming days.
Words of profound gratitude are due to those who in many ways have supported us in the adventure that is about to begin.
First of all, we would like sincerely to thank the Archbishop of Siracusa, Francesco Lomanto, for welcoming us to this cathedral. Thanks also due to Archbishop Emeritus Giuseppe Costanzo for his support.
We are grateful to the Mayor of Siracusa, Dr. Francesco Italia, for granting us the patronage of the municipality and for officially recognizing the cultural importance of the EABS Annual Conference for the city of Siracusa.
To the Italian Bishops' Conference, the Diocesan Caritas, the Associazione Nazionale Costruttori Edili, and all our sponsors and benefactors, we would like to extend special thanks for their generous support.
Likewise, we can only have words of appreciation for the support given by the Settore Apostolato Biblico of the Italian Bishops' Conference, the Associazione Biblica Italiana, and the Istituto Nazionale del Dramma Antico.
Last, but certainly not least, we thank the Istituto Superiore di Scienze Religiose San Metodio, its director Salvatore Spataro, and its secretary Mariangela Maresca, better known as Wonder Woman, for hosting the 2023 EABS Annual Conference. The San Metodio was founded in the 70s and has always been characterized by the constant attempt to offer cultural and educational service not only to the Diocese of Siracusa, but also to the entire city.
In recent years, the San Metodio has played a prominent role in Sicily in the education of students of religious studies, and has significantly contributed to the dialogue with distinguished intellectuals about major cultural issues at both the local and the national levels. Nisi and I have a special bond with the San Metodio, since Nisi used to be its rector and I started my academic teaching experience here while Nisi was the rector.
We are pleased to share with you, with all of you, something unexpected. It was brought to the attention of Pope Francis that this year the EABS Annual Conference would take place in Siracusa, and Pope Francis kindly sent a letter with his blessing to the Archbishop of Siracusa. We would like to invite the Archbishop to the microphone to read the letter in Italian, and then we will then read it in English.
A Sua Eccellenza Reverentissimo Monsignor Francesco Lomanto, Arcivescovo di Siracusa, Moderatore, Istituto Superiore di Scienze Religiose San Metodio. In occasione della Annual Conference organizzata dalla European Association of Biblical Studies, in collaborazione con l'Istituto Superiore di Scienze Religiose San Metodio di Siracusa, che si terrà nei giorni 10-13 luglio prossimo, Papa Francesco è lieto di rivolgere il suo saluto agli organizzatori e ai partecipanti, sia in presenza che online. Il Santo Padre auspica che le giornate di studio e di riflessione sulla Sacra Scrittura, sorgente inesauribile e sempre fresca di sapienza, possano arricchire la conoscenza e l'approfondimento delle tematiche bibliche, favorendo anche la condivisione ecumenica e il dialogo interreligioso. Sua Santità assicura la sua vicinanza, incoraggiando il ministero dello studio della parola divina nel contesto fraterno dell'incontro, così che la ricerca accademica ispiri il desiderio di promuovere nuovi percorsi di collaborazione umana e religiosa. Cardinale Pietro Parolin, segretario di Stato di Sua Santità, dal Vaticano, 10 luglio 2023. Thank you.
On the occasion of the Annual Conference organized by the European Association of Biblical Studies in cooperation with the San Metodio Higher Institute of Religious Sciences in Siracusa, to be held from 10 to 13 July next, His Holiness Pope Francis is pleased to send his greetings to the organizers and to those participating in person and online. The Holy Father trusts that this time of study and reflection on sacred scriptures, an inexhaustible and ever-fresh source of wisdom, will enrich your knowledge and understanding of biblical themes and foster ecumenical sharing and interreligious dialogue. His Holiness assures you of his closeness, encourages you in your vocation to study God's Word in the fraternal context of encounter, so that academic research will instill a strong desire to promote new paths of human and religious cooperation. From the Vatican, 10th July 2023.
Siracusa's history goes back thousands of years. In welcoming you to this city, we want to give you a brief, very brief, we promise, overview of some of the people who have shaped the history and culture of Siracusa and who have had a huge impact far beyond the borders of Sicily. Of course, we will not cover the entire history of Siracusa, do not panic.
We will simply highlight a few prominent figures associated with this city, the classical and late antique periods, who had the courage to look at and to think about the world in a different way, outside the box of established cultural conventions and norms.
And we will conclude by extending our presentation to medieval Sicily and the court of Frederick II.
One of the classical authors who greatly contributed to Siracusa's popularity in ancient times was undoubtedly Plato, because when Plato wrote the Republic around 375 BCE, and imagined the place where his utopian ideal of the state could be realized, he thought of Siracusa.
Although Plato was passionate about political life from a very young age, it was primarily the death of Socrates that prompted him to reflect on the ideal state and how to achieve it.
His trip to southern Italy after Socrates' death in 399 BCE seems to have been a turning point for Plato.
During his first sojourn in Siracusa, he became a very close friend of Dion. Dion was one of the brothers-in-law of Dionisius the Elder, the tyrant of Siracusa. And when Dionysius the Younger succeeded his father on the throne of Siracusa, Plato, who at that time was in Athens, was called back to Siracusa to bring about the political reform that he had in mind.
Plato joined Dion and Dionysius the Younger, but because of a series of conflicts with both, he returned to Athens disappointed that he could not realize his political dreams.
Now, judging the Platonic utopia retrospectively and in light of modern democratic values, I guess we can only rejoice that he failed. It's hard to believe that any of us would like to live in the Platonic state where, for instance, some members of the people would be excluded from education and leadership roles just because they did not belong to the elite.
It would certainly be easy to point the finger at ancient sources and figures such as Plato for being unable to imagine a world shaped by our ethical values and democratic ideals. Values and ideals that we ourselves have only recently embraced and still struggle to realize fully.
More useful would perhaps be to try to understand what remains in our minds, in our societies, in our cultures, of those ancient worldviews that we no longer wish to share. Certainly, Plato was not a champion of inclusion, was he? But the question is whether and to what extent we are champions of inclusion.
EABS clearly is. And we are glad to see and host a group of scholars who are diverse in so many ways. Plato had his dream, we have ours.
And it's the dream of a society in which no one feels excluded or marginalized. A society in which all diversity is welcomed as an asset and a resource. Of course, we are here first and foremost to contribute to the advancement of biblical studies. However, we like to think that hosting this event is an opportunity to contribute somewhat, not only to the advancement of biblical scholarship, but also to spread the ideal of a more open and inclusive society in which everyone feels fully integrated and not in spite of who they are, but precisely because of who they are.
Speaking of Syracuse in the context of classical Greek culture, in addition to Plato, two characters come to mind. The first is Archimedes.
Born in Syracuse at the beginning of the 3rd century BCE, Archimedes was one of the greatest scientists of the ancient world, which our bells now are celebrating. So his research represents the culmination of ancient Greek science and the starting point for the development of modern science.
This is not the occasion to list the new scientific discoveries of this distinguished citizen of Siracusa. We would only like to emphasize his extraordinary ability to observe phenomena with new eyes, venture into new research hypotheses, and develop new scientific methods and theories that allowed everyone profoundly to reconsider a previous scientific finding and to understand that the world is much more complex than anyone could possibly imagine.
Now, during the Roman siege in 212, Archimedes was at the head of the city's defense. His death has been recounted in many legendary ways, all emphasizing Archimedes' commitment to science and research until the last moments of his life.
For example, according to Plutarch, Archimedes died because he had upset a nervous and impatient Roman soldier.
To that soldier, who only wanted to arrest him and lead him to the Council Marcellus, Archimedes allegedly said to wait a moment, because he had to conclude a mathematical calculation. The soldier then became angry, of course, drew his sword and killed him.
Now, how much truth there is in this story is difficult to determine. And this does not come as a surprise, as we biblical scholars know quite well that there are good stories and true stories, and often the two are not mutually inclusive.
Now, the other character to whom Nisi was referring is Theocritus. Theocritus, the creator of ancient Greek pastoral poetry. We know that he was born around 300 BC, and he's often referred to as Theocritus of Siracusa. Now, to be fair, we don't really know whether he was born here, but let's pretend he was, shall we? Because this is a good story for the sake of this presentation.
Theocritus invented a new way of looking at love and giving it artistic voice and representation. His poetry became a source of inspiration for Virgil, much of Renaissance poetry and theater, and later authors such as John Milton and Percy Bysshe Shelley. Theocritus is particularly important to scholars of the Song of Songs, especially to those who date the song to the Hellenistic period, because of the many similarities between the song and Theocritus' love poetry.
These similarities had already been pointed out in the late 19th century and were taken up by the Italian Hebraist Giovanni Garbini in 1992.
If the song is a late biblical book, as many scholars now argue, the song might be one of the first attempts in the history of Jewish literature to bring together biblical imagery, Egyptian love poetry, and Hellenistic poetry, showing how much beauty and richness the audacious combination of different traditions can generate.
Of course, being Sicilian and having worked on the song, I make no secret of the fact that I find the idea of some kind of connection between the song and Theocritus of Siracusa quite appealing. Although, of course, whether and to what extent whoever composed the song was aware of Theocritus' poetry is a matter of debate.
Siracusa was not only an important city in the classical age, but also in early Christianity. We docked at Siracusa, where we stayed for 3 days. These are words of the Acts of the Apostles. During his last journey from Asia to Rome, Paul's ship ended up in the middle of a storm, and he and his companions were at the mercy of the waves for several days. Miraculously, the castaways succeeded in reaching Malta.
And they were then taken to Siracusa, where they remained for 3 days. From here they went to Rome. Now, at first glance, this might appear an irrelevant detail in Paul's journey. Nowadays, however, we need to recall this detail for more than one reason.
The first is that in this land, Paul left a powerful testimony of his commitment to his faith and religious beliefs. Having reached the shores of Siracusa, he had the opportunity to preach the gospel, and this was of crucial importance for the development of Christianity in Sicily.
The second reason, however, concerns our tragic present. For many different reasons, many men, women, and children dream of reaching Sicily, finding a refuge, and starting a new life. But for many of them, this dream becomes a terrible nightmare.
The Mare Nostrum has become the grave of so many people. According to official data, since 2014, more than 26,000 people have died or gone missing in an attempt to cross the Mediterranean Sea. We would like to suggest that while we admire the beautiful sea around us, we could also think of those who would have liked to come to these shores but never reached them.
Paul is not the only eminent character of the Christian history of this city. If you ask any resident of Siracusa who the most famous woman in the world is, they will tell you without hesitation, Lucia.
This is indeed the city of Lucia, the city of luce, of light. She lived between the 3rd and 4th century CE, but already the 5th century chronicles tell us of this young girl who suffered martyrdom during the persecution of the Emperor Diocletian. Before the prefect Paschasius, Lucia refused to make offerings to idols. For this, she was condemned to death and killed by having her throat cut.
Like so many women of this land, Lucia is the image of someone who lives not for herself, but for others. Her story is to a large extent a story of oppression, vulnerability, and darkness. But for us Sicilians, this is primarily a story of freedom, of resilience, and light. We look at her eyes, and we see the possibility of a new world.
Dante Alighieri, the greatest of Italian poets, reserves a special place for Lucia in his Divine Comedy. He wrote, «Venne una donna e disse, I son Lucia, lasciatemi pigliar costui che dorme, si l'agevolerò per la sua via». Namely, a woman came and said, I am Lucia, allow me to wake the man who is sleeping and help him to resume his journey. That man who sleeps is first and foremost Dante himself, who must be awakened so he can continue his journey to paradise, but who doesn't need a Lucia in their journey.
Let us now leap forward a few centuries and extend our gaze to the rest of Sicily in the time of Frederick II, and in particular to the Sicilian School of Poetry.
To speak of the Sicilian School of Poetry is to speak of the very origins of Italian vernacular lyric poetry, which is to be situated in the vibrant cultural environment of the court of Frederick II in Palermo at the beginning of the 13th century.
Now, ob torto collo, we Sicilians have to acknowledge that fragments of an earlier love song were recently found in Ravenna, in Emilia-Romagna. But with all due respect for our friends in Emilia-Romagna, we must also say that the rough and amateurish style of that song only confirms that the Sicilian Poetic School is the very first documented school of vernacular poetry in Italy.
This was already recognized in the De Vulgari Eloquentia by Dante Alighieri, the first person to use the expression Sicilian school to indicate a literary movement that during the first 3 quarters of the 13th century gave rise to a vast lyrical production in the vernacular at the court of Frederick II, having an enormous impact on subsequent Tuscan poetic production and even on Dante Alighieri himself.
Now, the Sicilian School of Poetry was part of the broader cultural program of Frederick II, King of Sicily, King of Germany, King of Italy and Holy Roman Emperor, and King of Jerusalem. Now, as a man who was not particularly concerned with keeping a low profile, Frederick II was more simply known as Stupor Mundi, the wonder of the world.
During and after the days of the conference, you will have the chance to visit one of the many castles that Frederick II built during the years of his empire, the Castello Maniace. This castle is named after the Byzantine commander Giorgio Maniace, prince and vicar of the emperor of Constantinople.
Giorgio Maniace was a descendant of the imperial family of Byzantium, whose descendants were related to the royal house of Altavilla, from which Frederick II is also descended. Frederick II was indeed the son of the Empress Constanze of Altavilla.
Later, under the Aragonese, the castle hosted a number of queens, such as Constance of Aragon, Mary of Sicily, Blanche of Navarre, and finally also the last queen to hold dominion over the city, Germana de Foix, second wife of Ferdinand the Catholic.
Now, going back to Frederick II, he was a very controversial figure, but was undoubtedly also a visionary, a man of exceptional intelligence, a free-minded and eclectic emperor, legislator, and scholar. In 1220, he established his court in Sicily, in Palermo, and made this court a meeting place of Greek, Latin, Germanic, Arab, and Jewish cultures in order to create a multicultural, secular, and refined intellectual environment in opposition to that of the Church.
Frederick II was certainly a true intellectual, with a genuine interest in every science and form of knowledge. But he was also a very skillful politician. Indeed, his frenzied cultural activity of bringing all the greatest scholars of the time to his court, whatever religion they belonged to and whatever land they came from, was part of his political agenda.
By bringing together so many different traditions at his court, he wanted to demonstrate the unifying capacity of his political power and person, in sharp contrast with other political leaders, most notably the Pope.
The intense legislative and administrative work of his court was characterized by extreme care to diplomatic language. All imperial officials had to be, and were in fact, refined literati, because all administrative and legal documents had to be elegant, solemn, and animated by the most subtle rhetorical devices in order to convey the message of Frederick's supreme imperial dignity.
In other words, Frederick's passion for culture ultimately aimed to make everyone capitulate at his own feet, not only through the administrative efficiency of his court, but also through the dazzling erudition of his officials.
What did the Sicilian poets write about? For obvious reasons, they were not allowed to write about politics, because it is nice to be surrounded by intellectuals, but let's face it, intellectuals are often loose cannons. So the emperor's mandate was write about love. After all, who doesn't love, love?
And by picking up and profoundly transforming Provençal love poetry, the Sicilians gave origin to a courtly way of celebrating love that became the main reference point for all subsequent lyric production in Italy.
As was already the case in French poetry, although with important differences, Sicilian poetry was all about the woman, whom the man was to serve with dedication. Sicilian poets saw the woman as a superior being, the source of all the joys, but also of all the pain for men.
This hyper-idealization of the feminine is, of course, one of the many ways in which androcentric societies have exerted their control and power over actual women. We cannot help but notice, in fact, that even though in Sicilian poetry women are at the center as objects of male admiration, the concrete experience of women and their points of view are completely missing.
In fact, in Sicilian poetry, the woman is almost never given the floor as a speaker. And when it does happen, very rarely, it is still the males who put their words into the mouths of women, mansplaining avant la lettre. On the other hand, it could not be otherwise, since Sicilian poets were court officials of Frederick II and women had almost no access to education unless they belonged to the nobility.
Now, she is the exception. Nina, called Nina Siciliana or Nina da Messina or Monna Nina. We do not know much about her, and in the past even her historicity has been questioned. Today she is widely acknowledged as the first poetess in vernacular Italian.
Nina did not belong to Frederick's court, but she seems to have encountered poets of the Sicilian school who were from Messina, where Nina perhaps lived.
And Nina accomplished an actual revolution, and her legacy would be picked up by Italian poets only later in the 15th and 16th centuries. With Nina, women became not only objects of men's desire, but also subjects of passionate love, challenging the scheme of the amor cortese, courtly love, on which the Sicilian poets, the male Sicilian poets, had drawn.
With Nina, the woman becomes the active protagonist of love and poetry, superior to all male hesitations and able to take the reins of courtship. In this respect, Nina is reminiscent of the Song of Songs Shulamit.
Now, Sicilians continue to champion this poetess, Nina Siciliana, as a symbol of shrewdness, courage, and the ability to turn oppressive cultural conventions upside down.
With Nina, we conclude our very concise presentation of some of the protagonists who have shaped the history and culture of Siracusa and Sicily in general. You will forgive us if we stop here, I suppose. It is just that we do not want to see you melting from the heat before our eyes. Allow us just to say some final words.
Now, Sicily is a land known international for a number of reasons, some internationally for a number of reasons, some very noble and some very much less so. And among the latter, we refer, of course, to the scourge of the mafia phenomenon, which since the second half of the 19th century has profoundly humiliated, impoverished this land, devastated its social fabric, and seriously damaged our reputation.
Yet Sicilian history is a powerful testimony that this land, this island, is not just mafia and granita. Sicilians need to be seen, thought of, and remembered for all they have accomplished and contributed over the centuries.
We believe that Sicily needs, among many things, a new narrative, one that, without denying the problems of the present, includes all the beauty and the richness of Sicilian history and culture.
This new narrative should not be an act of self-glorification, which would be pointless, but part of a truly responsible cultural program aimed at reconstructing what Sicilians have been, what they are, and what they want to be in the world.
Thank you for your attention and enjoy the conference.
I will repeat the information that I gave you a few minutes ago. So we will exit the cathedral and we go to the right. This street is called Via Minerva. And there will be some volunteers who will lead us all to the goal that is Via de Benedictis for the reception. Okay, enjoy your stay here.
Remember that you are in Italy. Take it slowly because they are waiting us for aid. So, slowly, take your time, enjoy Siracusa and see you there. Bye.